Well, it seems to have gone down well, because I was on your Twitter before we started, and when you scroll down through your feed, like I was going for like 5 minutes, and it's all just people like saying how much they've enjoyed it and stuff. And
that's good. Well, whatever I'm doing is working. Then that's good. Yeah, that's the curated list. To be fair, all the feedback's been positive, so like I'm dead happy. I was worried that, I mean, I've had negative feedback in the past, and I kind of worry that I was like, oh, surely there'll be some negative stuff kicking about. But so far, like, apart from a couple of comments about how unenthusiastic my presenting was, like, which I can live with. It's not wrong.
Well, I think I saw someone
really
say they found it quite refreshing. Like just having someone normal on TV as opposed to, there's a weird kind of disconnect when someone does that presenter voice, if you know what I mean.
I think it's this hopefully the style's kind of a bit more different to what people are used to seeing, which I think people are liking, but yeah, I still need to get it out there. I mean, they've been sort of featuring it places and like putting it on. It was on the BBC News website briefly yesterday and stuff like that. So I have been getting like messages from folk that I don't know. I mean, like mates have got in touch and said they liked it, but I've also been having like sort of random folk that I don't know getting in touch, which I feel like is a good sign.
That's kind of more meaningful, isn't it? A little bit.
Yeah.
Or meaningful in a different way.
Aye. Because if it's just your mates, you'd be like, oh, well, that's good, but they kind of have to say they like it. Whereas when people from that you've never heard of are getting in touch, you sort of think, well, they've like watched it, then like looked me up, found me, and then gone to the effort to message me. And I'm like, if I was, because I watched loads of stuff, it doesn't come into my head to find out who made it and message them. That's almost like a few extra steps. So I feel like if they've done that, there's probably also a bunch of folk sort of that wouldn't do that have also enjoyed it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Trying to kind of imagine, like, not everyone that watches it obviously messages to say so. That's only like probably a small percentage. So hopefully the numbers are kind of like reasonable, but it is kind of hard to gauge because it's not like it has a little play number next to the iPlayer,
I guess it's handy though if you've got that BBC platform. Like you've kind of got a variety of ways they can push it. Like I saw you were on Janice Forsyth on Monday, earlier on in the week.
Aye, on Monday. Aye, yeah, that was good. That was good fun. It's totally weird being on the radio, but like from your bedroom. But I suppose it's like what we're doing just now. But
it's live though, isn't it?
It's live, so there was a pressure of like you were kind of listening to it, and then it doesn't count you down, but you get like a little warning, like you're on after the song, and then it was like right, and then it's just like. She just sort of says hello, and then you're like, all right,
here we go.
You just have to hope that it's like, I'm like, hi, I like kind of in amazement that she can actually hear me because it's just me on my computer. But, and it's like on a browser, they just send you a browser link and it does it all in like Google Chrome. So you don't have to like
do anything.
It's not even like Zoom or anything, you actually just like click a link and that's you in. So
to take the pressure off a little bit to what it would normally be if you're on radio.
I don't know, like, maybe a wee bit. I've done it because I've been on her show once back in 2017 with another guy that was like, he was promoting the Scottish Mental Health and Arts Film Festival, and I had a little film in it. So I was like, we were in the studio, and there's probably more pressure in that because there's more build up. Like you're going through, like I was going through to Glasgow, and then you're waiting in the waiting area, and you're getting taken up by, the producer. And
got your BBC pass on.
You got all that sort of stuff around it, which does add a certain hype. And then it's over in like 5 minutes. And then you got to go all the way back home again. But whereas this was like, I just had to sign into the link like 10 minutes beforehand. I was in. That was me. So that was kind of, I guess less pressure. But you do feel like you could just say anything and you could say the wrong thing. But it seemed to go okay, which is good. Yeah.
I think we should start off, Duncan, that we've got a bit of history.
Right.
Because I think it probably almost 3 years ago to the day you came up to Aberdeen and did a talk
for the
BFI film. What was it? BFI Film Academy.
Yeah, it was like BFI Film Academy. What was it? I was doing like an introduction to documentary or something. Was it?
Yeah.
It was something sort of. I feel like it was quite broad, and I was maybe just talking about how to get your film online or something. Because I've done 2 or 3. I think the one that I met you at was kind of about putting the films online and trying to like get it out there a wee bit.
I think so, because you spoke a lot about Lady with a Lamp and how that kind of took off through just uploading it and then overnight, boom.
Aye. the one that I probably did the least amount of. Well, it's funny because I did a load of work for that, put it on YouTube and did nothing, and it exploded on YouTube. And all the work I'd done on Vimeo, I got like 10, 20,000 views. But yeah, I can't believe that's 3 years ago. It feels like
it's pretty crazy.
Not that long ago. Yeah, but yeah, that's when we met.
And then
well, sorry, I was going to ask what you've been doing since, but you probably, I kind of know bits and bobs, but yeah.
Yeah, because we emailed back and forth for, I think, maybe about half a year after that. I kind of made some films that ripped you off a little bit, I think, in hindsight.
Not at all. No. I think that's, if anything, a compliment or a bit of positive praise if it was worth ripping off. But I don't think they did. I think they had their own thing going on.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that was kind of 3 years ago. But yeah, so I kind of did them, and then I'm at ECA now, which you actually gave a talk at on Monday. That I was at.
Were you at that as well?
Yeah.
I didn't put that. That didn't click, but yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I just kind of spoke and then had no idea who was there.
How do you find that
names, but
when you're
I didn't
speak into the screen?
Aye.
It's weird.
Because there was no one had their cameras on or anything really. It was just kind of like speaking, and I mean, I could see that people were online still watching it. So I was like, I think it's going all right. And then obviously there's the comments and stuff, but it is a bit of a strange experience doing a workshop in digital sense. It's quite good though, because it doesn't, I like doing them in person, but I because you get to meet folk, but they still kind of work digitally it doesn't take as long because you're just doing it and then you sort of sign off, and then I'm like, I could do other stuff with my day as well. Whereas normally when you're doing a workshop, that's kind of the whole day, even if it is only an hour. So it was good.
Yeah, well, like when you travelled up to Aberdeen, that's like a 6-hour journey time, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't know if that trip's the trip that I got stuck on the way back as well. There was a workshop that I was doing for the same people. It was a BFI one. It might have been the year after, but there was one of them that I got stuck on the way back for like hours on the track. So it definitely takes longer when that happens.
Had you started doing the ITV film at that point about the ferry crossing?
Probably.
Because I wondered if that was maybe why you were up.
It wouldn't have been why I was up, but I do remember that it felt like there was a while where I was always going to Aberdeen, and most of it was for filming that. But I do remember there was a few other things as well, like that workshop. So yeah, maybe, what was 3 years ago? I could probably figure it out because we're on 2021.
I think
so
the Brexit film hadn't come out. You spoke about that you were working on that. That was kind of the project, I think, that was in your immediate vision.
If it was 2018 or something, then yeah, I probably would have been working on that around about then. Definitely filming it, maybe not editing yet, but it probably was commissioned and I was sort of taking loads of trips to Aberdeen and then up to Shetland and back. Or maybe it had just come out. I have no idea. Yeah. I should know with it being my life, but I don't.
Do you find you lose track though, that it kind of all just blends into the one thing?
A wee bit. I mean, I know what order the short films come in that I've done. I suppose because of the All Aboard program, like, was almost like another thing on top of that. I kind of forget when it came out and when I was filming it, but I know it was like roughly 2017, 18, 19-ish. But I kind of don't place it as like chronological as the other stuff because it was kind of separate to a lot of the other stuff I was doing. It kind of slips by me a wee bit sometimes, yeah.
I guess, well, because I mean, if we look at the series that just came out, you shot the pilot for that in like 2019, but then it doesn't emerge until like a year and a half later.
Yeah, that's it. It's frustrating how long things take, but it's because we did the pilot. I mean, even before that, there was the initial conversation about the series was back in actually October 2018. It's when I had the kind of first meeting about whether I could maybe do something or not. And it was like, I had a whole bunch of ideas, which ended up sort of getting glued together and being what Scary Adult Things is. Almost like I kind of wanted to do something on Side Hustles and I wanted to do something on Living at Home. And like almost all the different episodes in a way it was like, well, instead of doing single documentaries, how about it's like a series and I'm kind of going investigating these things. That was the conversation back in 2018, late 2018, with then sort of pitching it formally early 2019, and then it getting commissioned just in the spring, and then like doing the pilot over the summer of 2019. So all that filming that you see in episode 1 mostly is takes place then. And then there was obviously the next stage of like, okay, well, you know, does the BBC like it? And so then there's a sort of waiting period. And then there's a like, yeah, we like it. What would the series look like? And it was like, okay, here's what the series would, you know, here's all the episodes that we would like to do, all this kind of stuff. And then there was the sort of next, you had to kind of then pitch it again. So it was like pitching the series formally kind of the end of 2019 into 2020. And then it got commissioned, you know, because there's quite a lot of weeks it takes a sort of just set amount of weeks for it to get ran past all the various people it needs to get ran past for it to get greenlit. So, and then it got commissioned, I feel like it was a couple of weeks before lockdown, or like things got really bad with the virus. So so it's weird when you think about how long all that took. And obviously I was doing other stuff. It's not like I was sitting about waiting for it to happen, but it was sort of something you're chipping away, and like you do a bit of work, you do the pilot, you do the proposals and stuff, and it just takes ages. And then eventually got told we can do it, and then suddenly the country goes into like lockdown, which was all right.
Again?
Well, it was like there was a sort of the BBC were really good because they were like, obviously things have changed a wee bit, but they got in touch with us. Like when they got in touch with, like, I'm told they did this with like every program that was kind of ongoing, and they were like, basically, we need to have a chat to sort of see what the state of play is. But we're committed to doing it because we've commissioned it. You know, there's no backtracking. You know, it's like you're definitely doing it. So it's like, okay, good. So that was quite reassuring when I found that out, because I was getting a bit worried that it would just get cancelled. But, you know, they were like, no, we definitely want you to do it. Obviously, it might be a bit of a while before you can do it, but we'll figure that out. So we had a chat. Some point in lockdown, decided that they were like, okay, well, how about we give you a bit of the budget up front, and you'll do all the research. So you find all the contributors, or as many as you can, for the series during lockdown remotely, so that you're not just sitting about waiting. And then once things open up enough that you can then film the thing, you obviously are kind of set, ready to go. So that's kind of what we did. We did like 5 weeks in lockdown of finding contributors, working with a researcher remotely and all this kind of stuff, so that we were ready to go, which ended up being, we started filming sort of end of August, and I pretty much haven't stopped until like, I feel like I still haven't really stopped fully because I'm like promoting the show. But, you know, we delivered it in, you know what, like I don't even know, because my calendar's all over the place now, that I almost just said we delivered it in April, which is next month, but we delivered it, that wouldn't make any sense. Yeah, we delivered it like late February. So I was kind of full time, apart from 2 weeks of Christmas, working on the show up until the end of February there.
That's a pretty tight turnaround if it's coming out like mid-March.
Yeah, well, that's it. And then obviously they were like keen to get it on straight away. So, which is great, because I don't want, you know, like that's like amazing that they were able to put it on so quick. So yeah, now I've had a couple of weeks where I was kind of like getting to go out for some walks and like remember what my life used to look like before I was making a TV series. And now it's on to kind of promoting every day. So I'm kind of back into it now for like a wee while. And then I guess it'll exist as a series, and I'll have to start doing something else. Otherwise I'll run out of like money. If you know what I mean. So,
well, yeah. It's up on iPlayer forever now, I think, isn't it? It's kind of up there. It stays around.
Yeah, at least for a year. So I think what often happens is they put it up for a year, and then I've seen them do this with other programs. They'll like repeat it so that it's then up for another year. But it'll definitely be up for a year. Whether or not it's up longer isn't really up to me. But
you think they would just have everything up, so they would kind of have the whole catalogue there?
I know their general
unless they
strategy,
license it out, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's it. But I think their general strategy is to not do as much of that now. Like, and that's I don't know. I'm definitely not an expert on the BBC's long-term strategy, but what I heard on the radio the other day was like that they were kind of not doing as much licensing out, and they wanted to keep more on iPlayer and like, you know, they got that like BritBox thing, which I've never actually used, but I think their hope is that they will have stuff available for longer periods of time. But whether that happens with our show, like I have no idea. It's kind of over to them really. Once you deliver it, it's like, yeah, for that first year anyway, it's definitely theirs. And like, it's good that it's up for so long, because obviously my hope is that obviously I'm trying to get people to watch it, but in a couple of months' time, you know, or like half a year's time, people might just discover it, which would be quite nice as well, do you know?
It seems like a bit of a word of mouth show, if that makes sense. It seems like something that people would watch and then tell someone else, and it kind of just gathers steam that way.
I think so. My mate referred to it as I've never heard this term, but I quite liked it, a sleeper hit, where it's sort of like it goes out, but you maybe don't hear about it straight away, but then it kind of gets recommended to you through a friend of a friend. And I think that seems to be what's happening from what I can see, is like, you know, my mates are telling their mates, and then now I'm getting messages from like mates of mates, and you know, things like that, which is good. And if it keeps going like that, I mean, all the feedback's been positive, so that's kind of ideal. It just keeps going. You never know. I know that the BBC have been doing quite a lot, like putting it on. Like obviously right now, it's like if you go on the BBC Scotland iPlayer page right now, it's like featured and stuff as well. So people hopefully will click on it. But yeah, I don't know. Doing stuff like this helps as well, like podcasts and things. But yeah, word of mouth. But it's funny how many folk have messaged me and been like, oh, you know, I've been a fan of your stuff for a while, but just wanted to get in touch. And you're like, all right. And they don't even like follow me on social media or anything. They still don't follow me. They just message me once. It's not like they don't want to sign up for my spam. They just wanted to be like, oh, by the way, I've seen a few things you've done over the years. Really good. Just wanted to see, you know, like, which is really nice as well. And so like, it just sort of shows that just because, you know, you don't have a huge follower count or whatever it is that people look for, like a marker of sort of an indication of how much your reach is, it doesn't mean that people aren't still fans and still kind of following what you're doing, which is quite good. So I think people just assume now it's like it's all about the amount of people you have on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. But actually there's kind of a whole load of other people out there that are aware of your work and kind of watching it as well, which is quite nice.
Yeah, there doesn't really seem to be any like rhyme or reason to it. Like you see it with podcasts as well. Like you might have a podcast with hardly any followers but gets massive guests. And then you might have one with like 10,000 that doesn't really get anybody on that's that big. There doesn't really seem to be a method to it.
That's it. And sometimes people like, yeah, podcasts kind of build audiences over time, and actually people then go back through the episodes. Like I know, like I've done that with podcasts. Like, I was listening to Adam Buxton's podcast the other day for the first time ever, really.
Wow.
Which is weird because I've listened to his audiobook for some reason, just never listened to his podcast. Which is weird. I don't know why I hadn't. But I clicked on it and I was like, oh, cool. So who's he interviewed? And I was like going back through,
there's a lot of good ones,
scrolling like way down just to see who there was. And I was like, all right, Robbie Williams, right? I'm into that. Let's see what Robbie's
I like how that's your go-to one.
That was the first one. I was like, right, Robbie Williams, I want to know what he's saying to Adam Buxton. That seemed to me like almost a bit of an odd pairing. So I was
That's
quite
an interesting
interested.
one, yeah. Because I think Robbie at the start of that says something like he wanted to go on to prove that he wasn't a dick.
Yeah.
But then there are parts in it where he still kind of comes across like a bit of a dick.
I think it's just his sort of, his swagger is always something in it that's sort of, I kind of weirdly can't help but admire how much he sort of always looks like he's enjoying himself. I don't know. Yeah, sort of wish I was able to effortlessly look like I was having fun all the time. But I have the opposite problem, whereas people always assume that I'm not having fun. Whereas I'm like, no, I am. It just doesn't show on the face or in the voice.
You said earlier on that when you were starting off this show, it kind of came from the idea that you wanted to make a film about each of the individual subjects, and then it kind of emerged as a series. At what point did you kind of notice the thread between all the different topics and realize, oh, this could be something bigger rather than individual pieces?
I guess they were all born out of like my own insecurities in some way. So I think the thing that linked them for me was a bit like, well, the things that I'm interested in. But then it was probably someone else that pointed out like, well, they're kind of all like, you know, these kind of adulting problems or like whatever. And I was like, all right, like kind of right enough. It's maybe about growing up. It's maybe about like feeling a bit like a failure or a bit daft. That was the thing that seemed to be linking them all. And in the back of my head, I was like, well, as long as I'm kind of interested in it and it's something that I can relate to, then it'll fit. Do you know what I mean? But then, yeah, I think it was more like, well, as someone who's not very well known, there needs to be a kind of like, what is it actually about? It's not just like some bloke called Duncan goes out and films whatever he fancies. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it has to be like something that appeals to an audience. It's like, right, yeah. So then it was just like, well, I think it's that sort of like reaching your late 20s, still living at home, thinking like, I feel a bit daft. And like, I look at stuff like folk that stream games and I'm like, maybe I could do that, but like sort of not being sure about it as well. And then not having enough confidence to maybe do it. And then like, and kind of just digging into stuff. Like in fitness gets a lot more tricky when you get a bit older as well. You know, your knees start packing in and you're like, well, what should I be doing? Like, you know, what everyone else seems to have some kind of fitness regime and all this sort of stuff. So all these things kind of, it just all started to link together quite well. And then working with like Studio Something, who I kind of partnered up with to produce the series, they helped a lot on distilling the series kind of idea and concept quite a lot as well, and sort of like reining it in from just me wanting to go out and film stuff. So yeah, so I think it's good. I think it's good balance of both now. Do you know?
So is it quite tightly kind of worked out before you're going and doing the filming? Are you kind of only filming what you need?
Nah. I mean, I film far too much. That's if the editor that I worked with, Erica, was here, she would tell you that I definitely film far too much. But I think there was an element of like there was probably like more planning than I would normally do, because I quite like to just rock up and film. So there was planning in that, like we obviously found contributors. So the researcher then also spoke to them on a Zoom call to, I suppose, interview them, but that sounds a bit formal. Like it was more just have a chat and ask a kind of few basic questions about what they do and like things like that. And then from there, like I would watch some of that interview and then we would also run it past the BBC commissioner to sort of check what her like take on it was as well, like just to sort of sign them off, because obviously they were putting money into like a series. It was like they needed a bit of reassurance about like who you're actually speaking to and stuff. So that was all fine, but that was obviously something a bit new for me. Like I'm used to just kind of doing stuff and filming whoever I want. So I was quite keen to not be involved in the Zoom interviews because I wanted to keep that kind of freshness. So when I meet them on screen, that's genuinely the first time I'm meeting them, rather than kind of already having interviewed them for the purposes of putting them in a film. I was kind of like really keen to avoid doing that. So there was like preparation like that. And we had a sort of like, well, why are we interviewing this person? You know, kind of what do they serve? What's their story point in the thing? And sometimes the story point we kind of planned and thought was going to work turned into a different story point. So there was always like, because it's documentary, it's always going to change and it's always going to turn into something else. But we did have a certain amount of structure put in place. The other thing I would do would be to sort of have a loose plan of like, okay, well, if, so say in episode 4, when I go to interview like Andrew, the gamer who is, I suppose, trying to reassure me that gaming's fine because he games and tells everyone and loves it.
Is this the guy in Sky?
Yeah, and the guy on Sky who's like the kind of unashamed gamer who just loves it, doesn't matter who knows about it. And I'm kind of this gamer, but feeling a bit awkward about telling. So it was kind of like, I'm going to him to, I guess, to get that reassurance that it's all right.
And you thrashed him at ping pong.
And I thrashed him at ping pong, yeah. So we like planned to do the ping pong thing because we're like, cool, visually that'll be funny. And that was something that came out of the Zoom. I heard him say he's got an Oculus Quest. And I was like, all right, I've got one of them. I was like, tell you what, there's this great ping pong game. I'll take it up. And if he's up for it, we'll do ping pong in his living room. So that was like planned. But then also the role play that we do was planned. I was like, I'll try and get him to do some role play. Might be quite funny. And then that keeps the kind of the story moving as well. So it doesn't get too far away from just into kind of like me having a laugh with someone. It needs to kind of always, it can veer from the path a wee bit, but it needs to still remain on point. So I would plan stuff like that. And again, like things would change and spontaneous things would happen on the shoots. But there was probably more planning than I'm normally used to putting in as well, if you know what I mean. But I think that was good. Yeah. It's just different working in TV. It was a bit of a learning curve for me as well, compared to say like some of the short films I do that are probably more comparable to like freestyle jazz at times or something, you know. It's a ridiculous comparison to make, but yeah.
Do you, that voice that, or that kind of idea you have before you go in where you're trying to work out where it pieces into the wider story, do you have that voice in your head when you're on camera kind of filming? Is that kind of an inner dialogue that's going on alongside the actual present moment?
These are good questions, good filmmaker questions. This is I'm enjoying this. It's a good question because it's hard to say what is going on in my head when I'm actually filming. Like there's definitely, I had to prepare some kind of loose questions to keep me on track. So like every night before filming, bearing in mind I was filming sometimes like 6 days in a row. So you're filming and then going back to either the hotel or your house to prepare for the next day's shoot. And probably, you know, I would always phone the contributor up the night before just to give a quick hello for like a couple of minutes to, you know, just to say hello before I turned up, so it wasn't like too weird. But
cup of tea conversation.
But yeah, the notes that I would do in my notebook were kind of questions, but there would also be a little bit at the end, like don't forget to take a production still, don't forget to film like a cutaway of the outside of the house. Like there was a few things, it was like almost a little checklist of like, don't forget to do those as well. And the kind of story point would be there of like, why, like I'm interviewing one specific person, just to make sure that I always got something that, you know, would bring it back to why we were there. Which again, you know, like and I wasn't perfect at it. There was a couple of shoots maybe that I forgot stuff and you're annoyed at yourself, but then you just have to like keep going. You're just like, I've got another shoot tomorrow, so I don't have time to sit about and like be annoyed at myself, which is refreshing and also like highly stressful. You're just like, oh God, I might have messed that whole thing up, but I've got to do tomorrow's shoot now. So, and that was like that for 8 weeks. So yeah.
Can you try and pick up the pieces in the next day's shoot? Do you kind of change your plan of attack for that day if you've maybe missed something the day before and you kind of want to pull more emphasis onto that?
Not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't filmed chronologically, but yeah, there's an element of that sometimes. If I'd filmed a scene for an episode and then like a week later I was filming what I suspected might be the next scene, or like at least in the same episode, I could be like, well, I didn't ask him that, but I'll ask her that because maybe that'll come into, and that did work a few times. So there's like certain questions in the series that probably I imagined a different contributor saying, but luckily someone else said it and I was like, oh good, we can use that. But yeah, but it is weird. I mean, you can't make anyone say anything. They just, you just have to kind of hope that they say something that is on what you want to look at. And the best stuff is when people say things that you don't expect. So that's always the more exciting thing. But yeah. I kind of wanted to stay away from like those classic TV documentary answers that sometimes people give and keep it more conversational and keep it a little bit more unexpected. And I would say at times there is slightly more formulaic bits here and there, but hopefully on the whole, there's a lot more of that kind of fresh, out of nowhere stuff where you're just like, oh, that's funny, you know? Wait a minute, my mum's knocking on the door. Yeah.
Did you find a difference when you went back and did the other interviews after the pilot? Because I found from doing the podcast in lockdown, people have almost been a lot more willing to open up. Did you notice that at all when you went back to do episodes 2 to 6 after? Because the first one was done like pre-lockdown.
I don't know. It's hard. Yeah, there maybe was a bit of that in that, like, I was lucky enough to be able to go and film with these people, but actually there wasn't a lot of socializing necessarily allowed when we were filming. I mean, there was a bit, but things were getting slowly worse again as we were kind of filming. People maybe were happy to kind of connect in a way that maybe they wouldn't have been before. I don't know. I feel like they would have been I feel like the people we spoke to would have been pretty similar before lockdown and after, yeah. But it is an interesting thought to think that maybe that had an effect as well. I suppose we weren't, topic-wise, we never spoke about lockdown much in the series. In fact, it's not mentioned.
Yeah, not at all, I don't think.
At all, really. Nah, I was quite keen not to, because I just felt like people are fed up of it, yeah. So it was good, and it gives people a bit of a break from it as well, watching something that almost feels like things were before. But yeah, I don't know, it's a good point. It's people on the whole were pretty open with me, which was great.
I guess it kind of brings us onto something else in that the kind of films that I became familiar with you through, and that you kind of started off making were very personal pieces about your family. But pretty much all the contributors in this series, with the exception of a few you hadn't met before, is there a value in kind of having that clear outside perspective on someone as opposed to having that previous connection with them?
Yeah, I suppose I was keen for the series to have a sort of homemade feel, and like that's why I was quite keen in like each episode, almost every episode, you kind of have someone that I know in it, just as a sort of like, almost like a starting point. In a lot of cases, it's like, well, okay, fitness, like who do I know that does fitness? It's like, well, Rachel does fitness. In fact, that's almost all she does now. So I'm going to just go and, so it kind of like would make sense that like my starting point would be like, oh, well, that person up the road from me has just bought a house. I'll go and speak to them, like, so I always wanted to have that, but then obviously I didn't want the whole series to be just people, I was like, but it has to kind of go, it has to be an expanded journey that starts at home and then goes out and meet other people and then come back. And I was like, ideally it has to be people that have a bit of a story or something interesting as well, And I think we got that. I think we got a good mixture of like just decent folk that, maybe on the surface as well, like they wouldn't have like a kind of headline sell. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not celebrities. Do you know what I mean? Like in the way that some documentaries maybe go for. But they're like really engaging, interesting people that like have a lot to say. Like ordinary, like I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Not seeking out like obscure or weird people, but just looking for people who you enjoy being with and enjoy spending time with as well, like on camera and has been part of the film. So it's kind of, I think it's a good mix. I mean, there's the odd sort of not higher, but I suppose like we got Ian Sterling for episode 4, and he's definitely one of the bigger names in the series. But then that's contrasted with going to speak to Andrew, who is like a high school teacher in Skye. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's not just aiming for one type of person, but like aiming for loads of different kind of interesting people. I think. Can't even remember what we were talking about now. I feel like I've wandered off into talking about different contributors.
That's maybe why people are more open as well, though, because they kind of have this opportunity that they wouldn't normally, where they can completely, I mean, they're probably not going to have the opportunity again, to be honest, to kind of be on TV in that way.
Something we always ask people was like, oh, have you been filmed before? And some of them had, some of them hadn't. And I just always, it doesn't really affect whether or not I'll film with them. It's just a sort of curious, like, oh, I quite like to know. Some of them will get filmed again due to the nature of their work. But yeah, others probably won't. So it is like quite a special occasion maybe for them. I don't know. I do like to think like I'm kind of making it with the person as well that I film with. It's like whatever scene that we do together, I like to feel like they're as involved in it as I am in terms of what we do and the direction of what we do and like the questions and the, like they can push back a bit and question me on stuff in some cases and things like that.
Yeah, it's like the bit when you're in the cinema with, I can't remember her name.
Dana.
Yeah. And she said, you say it feels like a test, and she says, who's testing who?
yeah. I like that. That was good. Yeah, she bounced back a few questions. I think like, yeah, stuff like that I really like, because you don't expect to see that in maybe a sort of documentary on the TV. So yeah, I think it makes it different.
The segue into that scene as well as you doing the mic check, like the kind of transition from the previous scene into it is you asking her to say her name and kind of test it out, and it just gives it that. It's like you're pulling back the curtain, really. It's that kind of gonzo like documentary filmmaking.
Yeah, I like the viewer to feel like they're involved in the journey and kind of with me every step of the way, even things that go wrong. So if someone doesn't turn up, actually, we might have a bigger problem. But
did that happen?
If we didn't, no. But someone was late once, but I didn't put that in because that would have just been like needlessly embarrassing someone. I think we like not getting permission for footage in episode 4.
Call of Duty
footage we didn't get permission for was kind of, we had like a few days left before we were going to like the online, like the post-production. So when the footage kind of suddenly we couldn't use it, and it was like, we can't take the scene out because we don't have anything else to put in. You know, we can't go and refilm something. It's just ridiculous. I don't have time. And I was just kind of like, well, the solution is I'll just blur it and I'll do voiceover and
it's
talk
funny
about how we didn't get permission. And actually, I weirdly prefer the scene now than when it was more of a normal scene, because it was still good before, but now I'm like, yeah, like you don't expect to see that. Like that's just like, yeah, we didn't get permission, so
it's like adding 3 other things. It's adding surprise, it's adding comedy, and it's grounding it. You're kind of turning what would be, you're adding like another 3 layers to that scene by doing that.
And it's kind of ludicrous because like if you want to watch someone playing Call of Duty, it's not difficult. Just Google it. Loads of people doing it right now as we speak. Millions of people watching streamers do it. But for some reason, there's more people are watching those streams right now as we speak online than will probably ever watch my documentary series. But we were refused permission because it's a TV thing for some reason.
It's weird how things don't catch up very quickly. Like you can't see that being a problem in like 15 years or whatever.
Nah. It was strange. We were led to believe that we would be fine to get permission, and we all kind of assumed as well a wee bit, maybe just because it's like, well, there's loads of people doing it, and the guy we're speaking to is quite like well known in the Call of Duty community and stuff, so we thought it would be okay, but we weren't showing anything like ludicrous either. It wasn't slagging off the game or anything. So yeah, that was an interesting one, but these things happen, and I'm sure they've got their reasons somewhere.
We've spoken about that episode a few times now. Was part of the series about kind of almost challenging stereotypes? Because part in that episode I really like where you go and speak to I can't remember if she's a psychologist or just studying video games at the university, and she kind of unpacks why people like video games. Yeah. Yeah,
I think definitely throughout the whole series there's a sort of digging into stereotypes, and it's like, well, the gamer stereotype or the stereotype of someone who lives at home with their parents, and kind of going into that and challenging it a bit, and also like saying, well, is there a bit more behind the surface? Like Alistair in episode 1, who lives at home, you maybe on the surface sort of see him, and you see all his Doctor Who stuff in his room, and you think, oh, yeah, maybe he should move out. But then, a bit like me with all my DVDs, but then...
you pulled the rug out from underneath us on that one, actually.
But then, yeah, it's like once you get to hear why, it's like, well, no, he had, his kidney failed, and he lost his job and his girlfriend, and had to move home, and his dad donated a kidney to save his life, and it was a big, long process. And it's like, suddenly when you look back at him in his bedroom, it's changed. It's not the same context anymore. And so your own, as a viewer, you may have judged him slightly when we started speaking to him, but then by the end of the interview, hopefully you've kind of reflected a bit on that. Well, that was my hope anyway. And yeah, throughout the series, hopefully we've done a bit of that kind of challenging stereotypes. Yeah.
Well, you understand him, or you understand why he would have his room that way, because he's maybe kind of looking back to a sweeter time.
Yeah. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with, like, my room's full of random stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, it's ridiculous. Like DVDs and just jigsaws. There's so much stuff. It's daft. And the thing in my head, which I suspect probably was going around his head as well, is like, well, it's a temporary solution, living at home. I think whenever you move home, you always see it as a temporary thing, and like, I'm not going to bother putting like stuff on the walls because I'll be out again in a couple of months once I've sorted myself out. 5 years later, things have just kind of like piled up on top of each other, and in my head, it's still a temporary solution. So yeah, like I saw a bit of that in what was maybe going on. Yeah, I could be wrong. Maybe if he had a house, he would also decorate it with Doctor Who stuff. I don't know, which would also be totally fine.
Yeah. So did you move away and come back home?
Yeah, I did live in a flat for my final year of university with a pal, and then I moved home, and then actually I moved out a year later for about 10 months, and then moved back again and was like, do you know what, I'm just going to move back home and save up. That'll be it. Do you know, like I'll be home for about a year or something, you know, but still here.
Well, that's the other interesting thing about the first episode, is where you kind of look at the fact that house prices are rising faster than you can save up, which is kind of taking quite a broad topical issue and putting it in this personal setting.
Yeah, that's the annoying thing, because yeah, I've been able to save a bit of money every year, and it's not like I'm not working. Do you know what I mean? I'm like out working all year round, you know, like, and saving money each year as well by living at home. But then, yeah, in Edinburgh, the house prices, what is it? They went up like 8% last year.
Surely
it's like 8%.
Surely it's got to crash after COVID, though. Like, you've
people
got to
keep
feel
saying
that's
that,
coming.
but people were saying that last year. Like, they were like, it's going to crash because the market's crashed and stuff. And I started reading up on it and trying to understand what that even meant. Couldn't get a straight answer, but then it didn't happen. They went up by 8%, and you think, oh, so maybe they'll crash now, but then they're still going up. And then you think, maybe it just won't.
But there must be something going wrong there if the market is in pieces because no one's buying houses, but the prices are still going up. But that can't end well.
Don't know though. I think people are buying.
Are they buying again? Yeah, I suppose, once lockdowns.
I think it's still happening, but I don't really understand it, because there's loads of stuff like stamp duty. I don't even know what that is. That's stamp duty. I mean, everyone keeps saying there's a stamp duty holiday, and I'm like, what does that sentence mean? A stamp duty holiday? Someone explain this to me and stop assuming that I know what that is. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, like, you know what I mean? It's a bit of a mess, but I'm pretty determined this year to finally move out.
What area of the documentary series were you most interested in kind of exploring and learning about?
So like, what kind of episode maybe interested me the most?
Yeah. Or which one did you learn the most from? Which experience that you had during the series?
I don't know if it's hard to pin down one. I think like I learned so much in different ways from each person I filmed with, rather than maybe one episode specifically. And coming away from it, had an overall feeling of like, you know, it was nice to be able to connect with all those folk and like see how everyone was living their little lives, and kind of we all just kind of everyone kind of wants the best for themselves and for other people. And it was a really positive feeling coming away from it, I think. I don't know if that was a learning thing or if that was just a general feeling of coming away from it. But I mean, I enjoyed the gaming one, going up to Sky and stuff, but I don't know, kind of just enjoyed them all. It's quite hard to say. Like the fitness one, I think turned out into kind of quite a good episode, and I did enjoy filming it, but doing the workouts was like awful in terms of like, it was exhausting, and it's not comfortable feeling that exhausted when you're also filming, because it's not like, I had a bit of help for the 2 workout scenes, like the researcher came and helped with another camera, but I'm kind of still making the film and like asking the questions, and then on top of that doing a workout. You know, it was like tricky to film, but you know, rewarding in terms of the finished result. I was really happy with. Whereas some of the gaming episodes were really fun in terms of like, I got to sit and play video games. So, but did I learn anything? I don't know. I did learn things, but did I learn as much? I don't know.
Well, when you're meeting all of these people who to some degree are, well, this is the thing about it, is that you meet a lot of people who are completely different to you, and you meet a lot who are a bit closer and a bit more similar. Did it affect your perception of yourself in your own life by exploring all the kind of different ideas of what life could be like as a millennial?
I'm still equally as embarrassed about a lot of the things, probably like living at home. but I've kind of owned it so much that like I've become like, I'm like, it's fine.
Once you make a documentary TV series out of it for the BBC, you kind of get a bit more claim over it.
that was the idea. I'm just going to own it. I'm just going to drive this right into the ground. Like no one can slag me off because it's that thing of like no one will be able to slag me off for it because I've done it to death. Do you know what I mean? Like I've really hammered it home, fully put it on the TV, exposed my bedroom in all its glory. So yeah, there was that element to it. It's a bit like I heard a interview with a comedian at some point. I don't know which comedian and which interview, but I feel like I've heard it said a few times almost, is like sometimes what stand-up comedians do is if there's something obviously physically there that you would make a joke at, the first thing they say on stage is like they kind of make fun of themselves and they sort of own that thing to sort of make sure an audience doesn't do it or something. There's like...
Makes them indestructible.
A wee bit, if you're able to own your own like insecurities like that and like your own what people might criticize, then it's like, well, you kind of one step ahead, hopefully. So it's maybe the whole thing is maybe the whole series is like a defense mechanism. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
It's almost like taking control over your emotions to a certain extent. Like I was watching In the Company of Insects as well today, which kind of feels like I don't know, is that you trying to take control of that experience when you may be feeling a little bit out of control?
Yeah, that was definitely a way of expressing myself and how I felt in a way that was, I guess, quite controlled and probably quite unconventional, but it felt like I needed to do something, but the conventional things I'm not maybe that good at, like talking to people about it or crying about it or whatever. So I thought like, what am I doing? Like, it kind of was like, yeah, I'll just film these insects and like talk about it to myself, I suppose, and then ultimately an audience. But I mean, the primary motivation with that was for me to process what I was feeling and turn it into something hopefully beautiful. But I guess that's going to be a matter of opinion, but something that could like honor the person that I'd lost, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, when I went into watching the series, I was thinking it's going to be a miracle if I get through this and don't have an existential crisis. And I made it. I was okay. And then today I put on In the Company of Insects, and that was where you got me. You sideswiped me when I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, very different. Very different thing to watch. That. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be allowed to put that on the TV. Even it's probably too.
It's quite dark.
Too abstract. Yeah, it's. I wanted it to be like. I didn't want to be limited in any way by it. I wanted to just kind of go 100%. I don't want any compromises here in terms of, because there's always compromise if you're doing something for someone else. So if it's a commission from anyone, whether that's the BBC or whatever, there's always a slight compromise. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's not too many compromises. And actually the BBC series was pretty good overall. There wasn't too much. But, I don't want to be like, I don't want to have to take a swear word out, for example, or anything like that. So it was just like, right, so I'm doing it for myself. There was no money involved. I'm the only one I've got to answer to, and just kind of let it out. And I think in the rawness of that, hopefully, that maybe gets to people if they can get past the fact that I'm like eating a biscuit 3 minutes in or whatever.
Was that made during the filming of this show?
We're back to me struggling with my own timeline here. So that was made in I think I put it online last year in the summer.
I thought it came out in January this year. I may be getting mixed up.
Summer last year. But then I think I put it online to coincide with the Glasgow Short Film Festival online screenings that they did in August last year.
Okay.
So I think it'll have been online since then, but like there's been various things that have like promoted it since. I would have filmed it 2019 in May, June, July, and then we did the music towards the end of 2019. Yeah, so the pilot was getting made at roughly the same time. Although, from my memory, I'd done a lot of the filming before the pilot, because I don't think I started the pilot until July, and I think I did a lot of the filming for this in kind of May, April time. So yeah, just before, but kind of around about the same time. Although weird, because in my head they don't feel very linked at all.
That's maybe why they were kind of shot around the same time, though, because they're kind of tapping into your creativity either side.
Places.
Yeah, one's like the kind of TV, like quite high produced, and one is completely raw and kind of DIY and pretty open.
Yeah,
they're both pretty open, I guess, though, in different ways.
They're different things. Yeah, I think that in the company of insects could easily push people away early doors. Do you know, they start it and could quite quickly go, oh, that's not for me. Whereas the TV series hopefully like lets you in a bit more. Do you know, it doesn't try and exclude anyone. It's quite a hopefully universal, entertaining experience. In the company of insects could be, but it's also not apologetic about what it is. It's quite, here's what I'm going to do. Come with me on that little 10-minute meditation, or don't, and definitely no hard feelings either way. Like, I was so doing it for me that like it was kind of like no one could watch it and it wouldn't matter. And it has gone down well with people, but it's not like the distribution of it did get slightly messed up with coronavirus, but the people that have seen it have really responded well to it. But yeah, it also depends on your own experiences, I think, though, that film. I think that's something that a lot of people could watch, and if they haven't gone through something like that, not see it in the same way. Whereas if they can relate it to their own experience, they'll get it a lot more, I think, if that makes sense.
That could even make it more powerful, though. Like if someone watches it when they haven't experienced that, and then they come back to it after they have, suddenly it takes on a completely new shape and meaning for them.
Yeah, exactly. There's films that's happened for me with. Like I've rewatched loads of films that maybe I watched when I was 15, and you're like, I just thought that was an action film, and then you watch it like when you're 30 and you've got a bit of life experience under you, and you're like, oh, that's what that film was about. Like sitting there in tears. You know, it's funny how that happens.
Starship Troopers. Hang on.
Starship
there
Troopers,
might be a little bit of satire going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. I saw a clip of that the other day, actually. Yeah, it's
classic.
It is a classic. That's not one I've rewatched, but yeah, I did watch that when I was 15 or so. And my mate showed me when I was 15 or something. He brought it round on VHS very excitedly. But yeah, you know what I mean? I think that's probably would be the case. But I do like to do a film every year as well that's just for me, you know. I haven't done that this year or the last year because I did the series, took so much time that I've just not had time to do any kind of other projects really. But hopefully this year I'll maybe find a bit of time to like do another little small thing just for myself, you know.
Is that kind of just to keep you in touch with what's like at the core of your creativity and what you're interested in, or why do you kind of feel the need to want to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just I think it is. It's just like painting a picture for yourself and not always doing commissions, you know. I think it's like, that was a bit of a flowery way of saying it, wasn't it? But yeah, it's, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's good to,
yeah.
Because it's great with the series. I've got to do so much of what I want to do, and I've done it in a style that I want to make programs in. I'm in there. My insecurities are in there. Like, it's very personal as well as being an entertaining program for TV, which is amazing to be allowed to do that. But there is still a bit of me inside that's like, I want to go and film clouds for a couple of days and like talk about death over the top or something, you know. And it's like,
one for me, one for you. I think
it's good to, a wee bit, aye. And I've always sort of been a bit like that though throughout. I think it's good to do stuff for yourself as well.
I wanted to wrap us up with, I was on your website and I came across a section called Good Documentary Questions Generator.
Yeah.
And
nice.
some felt quite apt for this show that you've just made, so that we could finish up with a couple of them.
Aye, let's do it. I came up with the idea for that website on the bus home one day. Emailed my brother, who he can make websites and stuff. And I knew he'd done a generator website before, so I emailed him. And like a day later, we had it up and running and like banged a few questions in. And we've never added any questions since. So it's like, it's remained unchanged for years now. But yeah.
Good questions, though.
Thanks. They're quite, sorry, I feel like they're quite classic, like almost, you know, like deep documentary questions, you know. But yeah, I've forgotten what they even are. So,
do you ever use them as icebreakers? You used one in North Merchiston. You asked one of the ladies, what would you say if 7 billion people were watching you right now?
I think that's a classic. I use it in I use it at the end of Isabella, the short film I made with Ross Hogg. We ask that at the end.
Or maybe that's what I'm thinking of, actually.
Yeah,
maybe
it's
both.
Like, and she's like, she takes ages to think about it, and then she says, "Go away."
That was another one that sideswiped me today. Like when she's talking about dreams and stuff and that as well. And you ask what she dreamed about, and she said, "I don't dream anymore." It's like, oh.
Yeah, that was
it's tough.
It's weird watching that back because it was. Yeah, it's strange. We filmed all that on like in one or 2 days and didn't really 2 days, and then like made it all from that. And so I'm like always amazed about how much stuff we got in a short space of time filming. But yeah,
and you won a BAFTA for it.
And then we did. We won the BAFTA Scotland for it. Yeah.
Where's the BAFTA?
Where is it? It's Ross gave it to his mum.
Oh, that's
they only give you one. So if you win with someone else, you have this discussion where it's like, well, who gets the trophy? And I'm like, well, it's your gran. So it's your gran that's in the film. You're definitely getting the trophy.
It's a bit cheaper, the BAFTAs, though.
Well, you can pay for another one if you want, but it's like 200 quid. So
man,
who's got that lying about? Not even got a house yet. But no, it was good though. It was great to get the award and get like recognised for a film that you've made with your mate. Do you know?
Yeah,
it's quality.
Questions.
Right.
What would you say to your 21-year-old self?
When I was 21, I was still at the art college, so I'd probably just say like, don't give up. But I probably would say that to myself at any age in the past, because there's always I remember, I don't know if it was at art college or if it was before that when I was at Telford College doing the TV production. I remember there was a point where I was like, well, if it doesn't work out, like the Boots management scheme seems like an all right deal, right? And this was like a genuine, like, I used to enjoy like working in Boots. I liked the people I worked with. I had a laugh with them. I liked my boss, and I thought, you know what, this is all right. Like, if the film thing doesn't work out, like maybe this is all right. So I would genuinely like, those kind of thoughts would go through my head. Because there wasn't like, I don't know, there wasn't a lot of like, you would see a lot of people go into film and then not really do much with it and then disappear off the radar a bit. Like that was kind of a common pattern of people that I saw in various film schools, various courses and stuff. And you kind of start thinking, well, statistically, I'll probably be one of them as well then. And like, luckily, I kind of didn't let myself give up, because if I'd let any of the failures along the way get to me too much, I might have ended up doing that. And so I think it's just good to reassure people that if you just keep doing it, you know, you'll get better at it, and, you know, you'll be all right. You'll be able to do what you want for a living. So
I think part of the thing with the film industry as well is that it does take time. Like you just build up context over time. So if you stay in it for 10 years, you're going to have a much better chance of making it than if you only stay in it for 5 years, if that makes sense. Or making a living out of it, rather.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to stick it out.
Exactly, yeah. If you hang around long enough, they'll give you a job. Like that's the way of it. It's like, he's probably not going away, is he? He's probably just going to keep pitching ideas to us until we eventually commission him. So, let's just give him something to shut him up. That's what happens. No, I know what you mean. It is like, yeah, it does take a long time. Like there's a lot. I mean, what is it? When did I graduate art college? 2013.
Wow.
So 8 years ago. So it does take a while. But, you know, I've done so much as well. You know, you kind of forget all the films and festivals that you've traveled to and like stuff and like friends that you've met. You know, it's like you suddenly look back and you go, oh, I'm actually doing it. You're like, I'm actually doing what I want to do. Like, this is actually what I hoped would happen. And I've now done half the things that I hoped I would do. It's kind of bizarre when you start thinking.
I think as well, if you look at your kind of career over the last 8 years, year by year, it's been a steady stepping stone. Each year you've gotten, you know, a bit bigger and higher on the ladder, and it just keeps, it's a steady incline.
Yeah. There's been a progression, and I think without that progression, it gets hard to keep motivated. Like it can be quite demoralizing. And there's ups and downs. So although there's been a steady progression, there's definitely been quieter stretches of time. You know, like people might call them dry spells or whatever. Not necessarily dry in that I'm not working, just maybe that I'm doing nothing but corporate videos for 5 months, you know. Yeah, like that. Those can be quite difficult times, but if you're able to ride them, you know, you eventually get there, and then you get to sit and joke about them years later, like which is good. But yeah, I think a series of lucky breaks. But yeah, it's like also just keeping making stuff. Like some films will do well, other films won't do as well. Sometimes the film that you didn't think would catch on is the one that ends up doing all the festivals, you know. Yeah, the film you made in 2 weeks does better than the film you took a year making. Like there's no real science to like time doesn't seem to enter into the equation in terms of how long you spent on something as to whether it's good or not, or whether people watch it. It's like time isn't involved. You know, they don't care if you spent a year making it. If you spent a day making it, it can be funnier than the thing you spent making a year, you know. So,
yeah, it's like preparation plus opportunity equals success. And the preparation you have to do all the time, but the opportunity can come at any moment. You just don't know when. You have to make that film in 2 weeks, because if you hadn't made it in 2 weeks, it wouldn't have done well, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. The urgency of doing it sometimes is like, oh, actually what made it unique and kind of interesting and special. So it is bizarre what happens. But I mean, I just feel pretty grateful looking back over all of it in a way. Do you know, it's like it's been able to do so much in my 20s that's hopefully now set me to a position where going forward I'll be able to keep doing kind of consistently like the kind of work that I want to make, and also new opportunities as they come along. But it's hard, you know, it's hard to say. I still have that fear in the back of my head, like it'll all disappear and I'll never get asked to work again. Do you know what I mean? No one will ever accept my pitches again. Like that's that doesn't go away, I don't think.
Does that fuel you though?
A wee bit, aye. It scares me. I don't. But it does. In that, I suppose it does motivate you to not stop trying.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you ever feel like giving up, you probably need to like change something. You know, make a change somewhere. Like I remember there was a few years ago. I was getting a bit fed up with stuff, and I think and round about then I kind of did a couple of small radio things for Radio 4 for the Josie Long.
The Pierce Brosnan thing.
The Pierce Brosnan one, yeah. And like had the most fun I've had making like anything ever. Like it was, and we'd love to do more, you know, radio stuff in the future, because it was so refreshing to suddenly just remove the visuals almost and just look at it bare bones. In fact, it was when I was doing the STV thing, and I think I was getting a bit frustrated with some stuff. And,
probably when I met you.
Probably around about the same time, yeah. And yeah, it was just like, it was so much fun just to do the radio documentary stuff. Like, and I say radio documentary, one of them was me telling a story. The other one was a bit more of a documentary, the Pierce Brosnan one. I don't know if I can call the other one a documentary, because it was just me ranting about a thing that happened. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, you never know if I would love to do more stuff like that, or some kind of, you know, you never know, like a podcast thing or something. It just depends. I kind of lucky though. I feel like I'm always quite busy. So as long as what I'm busy doing is what I want to do, you know, I'm all right. It's when you get busy doing something you don't want to do, that's when you start to lose the plot a bit. But yeah.
What will the world look like in 50 years? It's number 2 from the good documentary question. That kind of fits into this documentary though that you've just made, because it's kind of, a lot of the things you're tackling are basically things that are probably going to be normal in 50 years.
I probably are. Well, 50 years is a long time. What was happening 50 years ago? That's probably a good way to think about
1971.
it. 1971. Aye, so like some stuff's similar. In fact, stylistically, there's a lot of 70s fashion is actually still quite cool, I think. Quite cool. I feel like, as I said, that it was the least cool thing. That was quite cool. Do people even say cool?
Fashion kind of came back around. It kind of died a little bit in the 2000s and early 2010s, and then it kind of was rebirthed in 2015 onwards, when all the kind of retro stuff came back in.
50 years is almost like a full cycle, it feels.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It almost feels like maybe things go back around. I don't know. It's almost terrifying to think what will have happened to the environment and things like that. It's hard. Yeah, so hard to say. I just hope that. I mean, I would be like
71.
wait a minute. No, wait,
81.
30, 81. Yeah,
That was awful math. Why did I say 71?
yeah. It took me just as long. It's pretty simple math as well. When you're 30, what's the world going to look like in 50 years? I'm sat there thinking about it for far too long. Yeah, I might not even be here, so it's hard to say. But if I am, hopefully my world looks like a nice place, even if the rest of the world is in flames. But I fear that all of us might be headed to a difficult future, potentially. I mean, it's getting hot. I know people talk about global warming. They say it's not quite as simple as, it's a warm day today, but like, it was roasting the past 3 days and it's March. I don't think that's normal.
Wow. Not if you're in Aberdeen. We're still cold and grey up here.
Okay, yeah, definitely not in Aberdeen. Yeah, you're going to be all right. Global warming. Thing is, with global warming, Aberdeen's probably going to be the sweet spot where you actually got
safe haven.
Yeah, it's going to be nice and smooth up there. You need to
build a wall.
I don't know. Build a wall around Aberdeen and just yeah, that's it. But nah, I mean, joking about it is almost feels bad in a way, because it definitely is a problem that concerns me, and I feel like it's taken a back seat the last couple of years because of the virus. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, not even the virus though. If you look at like Brexit and independence and all this stuff, that we kind of seem to be squabbling over all these little issues when the world's on fire.
Yeah, that's I know that's in a way that's In the Company of Insects. The short film that I made tackles that exact feeling of like despair at like everyone's just arguing about stuff and there's like conflict everywhere and all this stuff, and they're sending people to Mars. Do you know what I mean? Whilst the bees are all dying out. Do you know, like, it just doesn't, it's like frustrating and you feel kind of powerless to do anything about it. And yet I'm still driving a car that takes petrol because,
this is the other thing. We were speaking about 50 years ago. They had electronic cars 50 years ago. They're still not. They had electronic cars like back in the 50s and 60s. So they've been going a long time.
That's it. And they just need to be made like, they need to be more affordable, and there needs to be like, it needs to be like easier to get there. I mean, it'll get there, but I suppose even with them, there's like battery issues and stuff, isn't there? But I don't know what's going to happen. It's a bit overwhelming to even think about it. But yeah, if I'm alive, I hope at least I'm able to smile about something. Yeah.
Let's wrap this up on a positive note.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best thing you've ever done in your life? One more question from the list.
I feel awful that I put people through these types of questions. I mean, there's different things. Best thing I've ever done for myself is probably different to say best thing I've done for someone else. Do you know what I mean? Like there's different barometers. Best thing I've ever done. Like nothing's even coming to mind. Like I'm scanning the folders and I'm like,
Artistically,
don't even know if that would be for me to say, but I was always pretty happy with Taking Stock. I always feel like that was a pretty solid wee package. Don't edit this, so you edit out you changing the question to artistically. So it sounds like I'm just being a dickhead and being like, what's the best thing you've ever done in your life?
On.
Taking Stock. No, you know what I mean? But I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of a film like that, I feel like that's just one that I'm like, when I see it back, I'm like, it's tight.
It's the same with the Brexit film. Do you kind of prefer your films that orientate around simple concepts?
Yeah, maybe. Some people say The Lady with the Lamp's the best one.
Another simple concept.
It's a one-shot effort. I'd say Tweedie's pretty solid as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't know, here's just me talking about how solid all my films are. But yeah, I don't know. I think it is one of those things. It's like I'll have go through phases of liking different stuff, but it's for other people to judge really, probably, rather than me.